Hello and welcome to another Dicey Encounters video, and today we're hopping over that DM screen and we're going to talk about player characters. I want to talk about 5 D&D characters that I actually want to play, and as a kind of forever DM stereotype myself, I have a box full of character sheets that I've made over the years. Now it's D&D Beyond is where all my character sheets go, but I've had quite a few character ideas, over the years that I'd really like to play, and sometimes I get to play them in one-shots, and I've actually got another one-shot or two coming up, hopefully in the future, so I'll be able to try out some more of them. But I wanted to tell you guys what my cool character ideas are, so that maybe you could even try and steal them as well. Okay, so the first character that I want to play, I've played this one before in a one-shot that my brother DM'd, and I'd like to see what happens in an overall campaign with this guy. He was a Dragonborn paladin. I believe he was copper or something, so he breathed fire, and he was a Order of Vengeance paladin. And his story was that he was a mercenary, and then this mercenary company that he was a part of did some bad shit, which he disagreed with, so he left. And now he's heard they're doing even more bad shit, so he's actually trying to find his old mates and sort them out. And character-wise, you may have not have heard of Detective Chief Inspector Gene Hunt. The whole reason I wanted to play this character was because I like the idea of a military dragon man dressing down pretty much every single person he came across like this.
And Ray, if you come in here again dressed like a maths teacher, I will paint your balls the colour of hazelnuts and inform a bag of squirrels that winter's coming.
And I just had so much fun with this character. He had like a sword and board, so shield and a long sword, and he was kind of the tank of the party, even though he was really grumpy. And because he was based off of a male character from the 70s, he doesn't like asking for help, and he certainly doesn't like the other Dragonborn sorcerer that my girlfriend was playing at the time. Not a very deep character, but I would be interested to see where he went, if the DM would be able to incorporate that backstory into the campaign. Maybe he could catch up with his comrades, and maybe you could find out something a bit more about him. You see another side of him maybe, but he was definitely the only kind of strictly lawful character that I would want to play, where he kind of walks into a town, he sees people begging and asking for help, and he's like, no thanks mate, I've got my own problems. My second character idea is basically, I was writing a blog for work, and it was about the best classes, or the classes in order or something, and when I got to writing about the halfling, because I never played with a halfling, I've never been a halfling, I've never DM'd for a halfling, so I had to read the rules for halfling, and they just sound so good. And also, I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan, so actually being able to see the kind of the strength of hobbits and halflings and being able to roleplay that actually seemed like a really cool idea. So my second character is actually a halfling rogue, and probably arcane trickster. And the idea is they would be very much like Pippin. So kind of talks, very kind of innocent, and likes to sing songs.
There's a Mongo beer inside this tub.
But then maybe by the end of it, really kind of grows serious and really, fights the good fight.
Home is behind, the world ahead.
But the idea would be arcane trickster, so sort of a Pippin but with magic. A lot in performance, likes to entertain people, likes to cheer up the party and be nice, but there's kind of something underneath there, a kind of a conflict. And also, I think they did such a good job with this, with sort of showing off this race in the very Tolkien way. Like, they have that brave ability where they can get saving throws on being frightened, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in my campaign right now, running Curse of Strahd, a lot of the times the players are getting hit with those frightening abilities and spells, and the idea of all the party being frightened and the only person standing there is the halfling rogue being like, you don't frighten me, kind of thing. I think that'd be awesome. So my third idea is the one I haven't played as well. I haven't played the Halfling, haven't played this one. And it's an idea I sort of came up with because I like the idea of the Warlock. When I made this character, this was before the newer book, so the Warlock was kind of the worst class at the time. But I just like the idea of the Warlock being the only person in the party whose power is kind of on loan to him. All the power that he or she has is tied up with this entity that it's made a deal with, and slowly realizes that it's not a very nice entity, and it wants them to do stuff, and it has to, otherwise it's kind of useless. And I think that's just really interesting. Obviously it takes the DM to be able to work that into the game. They could just leave all that stuff, but if you really pushed for it and gave them a lot about their entity, about their patron, so that's the correct terminology, then they could come up with something. And this one that I have come up with was a background criminal, half elf, so very displaced, very much never had any kind of friends, always on the run, just criminal because that's his only choice in life. Ends up thrown in prison, and then he gets this contract proposed to him. I'll help you escape prison. You do something for me. You serve me. And yeah, he just takes it, and then that's his backstory. And it would kind of be one of those things where the other characters don't really know about this deal, and it would be cool to come up like later on. And as I said, I like that whole balance where the character has to, and the other players know as well. The other players know that you're in this situation, but the characters don't know. So they know that you're trying to work out how you're going to be able to do the quest and be a part of the party and be useful, but also you've got to murder someone, maybe, or something, or whatever the patron wants you to do. So my fourth character idea is one that I've also done. I did in a few sessions, and he was a human ranger, and he was basically a Medjay from, like in Assassin's Creed Origins, although this was before the game came out, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, kind of Egyptian style, dark-skinned, uses a longbow, has two short swords, or a sword and a cool, sort of crescent shield, and it's basically like this.
I struggled with some demons. They were middle class, and
I think I've talked about him before on the channel. The backstory is that he comes from a tribe of people who live in the desert, and this tribe nominates their strongest fighter to be have this special role where they go to civilization and kind of barter for supplies, and they scout the area and stuff, because they only have this one person who is allowed to go and mingle with other people. And the first time he goes, or the second or third time, he just stays. He doesn't want to. He likes the comforts of civilization, and then months passed, and it becomes impossible for him to go back because it's too far gone now. So he just travels, and he does hunting jobs and mercenary jobs, and that's when he comes across the party. He's also the only religious character that I would like to play, because I like the idea that he's got this religion that he grew up with, but it's all tied up in the culture, the strict culture of his past, and he's trying to. The more he distances himself from that culture, the more he kind of clings on to the rituals of his religion, and forces himself to do it. Like that is the only last bit of his old identity that he's clinging on to. But I like the idea that when we played, my friend who was playing a paladin was a very sort of righteous paladin, and my ranger kind of saw this righteousness, and he saw the ability of the paladin to use that righteousness to make himself incredibly powerful. I think in the first session he rolled like 45 damage somehow, and great weapon mastery and smite, I think, and all that, and 3 critical hits. But my character was so impressed, and he sort of latched onto the paladin and was like, how come your belief makes you so powerful, and my belief, which I've had my whole life, has kind of just been really hard. And I couldn't work out what would be cooler, being a Gloomstalker or being Beastmaster. In my head, in headcanon, I think he should have been a Beastmaster and had a giant scorpion pet or something similar. But in the game itself, I picked Gloomstalker because it was the coolest and the most interesting one. And when he hit level 3, he was in a dark dungeon where he couldn't see. So I thought the Gloomstalker would be a cool transition. My last character that I would like to play is... ever since I read this, I wanted to play one, and it's a wizard war mage. I don't really mind what class, which race, but I just like that idea of being the Gandalf and casting shield and dispelling everything and rescuing everybody, but doing it actually in every encounter, not just once per movie. And I did read a guide once for wizard which said, the prevention of damage is way more effective than the treatment of damage. So the best way to support your party is to prevent them from getting hit, as opposed to healing them after the fact. So having stuff like fog cloud, blindness, sleep, the laughter one, shield, dispel magic. Like you want to be. I want to be the guy who's like, oh yeah, by the way guys, I just dispelled this terrible magic that you're all gonna just get affected by, thank me when you're ready. And kind of just standing there in the middle of the battle, just like, with all the shields around you and glowing brightly in the middle of the battle. And I know it kind of works best when it's combined with, stuff like Hex Knight Eldritch Knight or Hexblade or something, but yeah, I'm not going to go too deep into it yet. Because normally the wizard in the party is always at the back reading his book, weakest HP in his robes, casting from a distance. And, in Lord of the Rings, Gandalf's always at the front. He's always protecting everyone. He's the most powerful guy there. He's, helping everyone. He's fighting enemies. He's really in the thick of it. And and he's in his robes. That's cool. So that was my 5 characters that I'd like to play in Dungeons and Dragons. I actually have my old box from the beginner set, and I went to open it before I did this video because in there I have all of my character sheets that I've done in pencil over the years, and it was quite funny, and they've all got names, silly names, and it's a little bit sad, but I think it's important to have that interest on both sides of the screen, and I always prefer playing I always prefer being a DM. Well, I have up until now. I've never been a player long enough for me to think this is better than being a DM. It's mostly because when you're a DM in the 2 weeks before the next session, you have a lot of ways to engage with the hobby, or you can just start a YouTube channel like this. Or a website, diceyandchaos.com. But I think if I was DMing one and being a player in one, that would actually work pretty well. And that's actually a video I'd like to do at some point as well, about sort of engaging with the hobby and being the person who is most engaged with the hobby, and how does that work, and people's views on the game. Is it just a silly game that you do with your friends, or is it actually a meaningful hobby that you put a lot of time into and work in, and you think should be respected on the same caliber as other important things? Who knows, and that's a topic for another day. Probably not next week. Maybe next week. You'll have to see. So tune in. As always, dicyencounters.com to read this blog and all my past blogs. And tune in next Friday for another video. Comment down below your characters that you've never got to play, because everyone's got one. They might be super OP or super stupid, but just, let me know. Okay, that's all today. I will see you next week. Until then.